Hey there fellow creators, Ben here from Cinder Studios, and this week I am back with another product review. Today we're looking at inks from the Birmingham Pen Company. Stick around. So despite the name Birmingham Pen Company, these inks are actually made right here in Pittsburgh, PA. I found out about these inks I was on Instagram, and all of a sudden sometime last year I was bombarded with an advertising campaign. And, you know, one thing in advertising rings true: persistence and just absolute saturation of, look at our stuff, does sometimes work after a while. So this is the story of, I guess, really good advertising. And this is the ink from the Birmingham Pen Company. Now, I want to start right out of the gate by saying that these inks are not designed for traditional artistic use. This is a company that specializes in custom-made fountain pens, as well as their line of inks. So as a result, my review is really coming at this from a very different angle. There are reviews of this ink out there already, but they're all exclusively from people using fountain and dip pens for calligraphy and writing. These are writing inks, they are not art inks. But I'm a visual artist, I love color, so I had to try these out. So while the company has over 100 different colors and unique styles of ink, only 16 of those are pigment inks, and that is what I decided to go with, at least for the vast majority of what I ordered here. I've got 4 main colors: Amaryllis, which is sort of a nice magenta color; Naples, which is a pretty basic yellow; Ice Age, which is definitely very similar to a phthalo blue, high probability that that's what the pigment they're using for this; and a black that they are calling Compost. But because the company is much more known for their dye-based inks, in reasons we'll get to a little bit later, I also picked up a little bit larger of one called Tesla Coil, which is one of their interesting dye-based inks. So let's just start out with my first impressions here. And I mean real first impressions. Between the getting sucked into their marketing, their website and shopping experience is awesome. It is top tier, world-class kind of stuff. Website is awesome. I browsed for a long time before I really decided what I wanted to buy. But when I did, you know, the whole process of everything, it is a clean, modern website, and honestly, I'm really impressed with that. When the package got here, more things that impressed me. The tape on the box is a custom tape with like message from the manufacturer. The packaging is awesome. Just taking everything out of the box. The company actually prides themselves on the unboxing experience, so they must be taking a page out of Apple Computer's book on that. From custom printed little boxes, really well wrapped stuff, and included postcards and promotional materials. I was thoroughly impressed with this. But fancy design aside, you can have all the fancy design you want, but if the product isn't any good, it's not going to matter. So what is using this ink actually like? The first thing I tried was just the black Compost color. I grabbed one of my dip pens out and just gave myself a couple of quick motions, scratchy lines, things to get a feel for the ink. From the quick dip pen test, I jumped into doing some color swatches. I tested these out on a piece of 140-pound cold-pressed watercolor paper, some of that nice Canson XL stuff. Pretty decent all-around testing paper in my studio. And I just put a little bit of ink down, a bit of layering with it, and drew out those with water to see how they looked, both with the pigment ink as well as the Tesla Coil dye-based ink. Now this is where their dye-based inks really caught my attention, is they're not just a flat color, at least quite a lot of them aren't. A bunch of them have interesting pearlescent shimmer effects, and that immediately becomes obvious once it dries. Because the colors I chose are pretty much identical to the ones you'd find in your home printer, I decided to do a quick color wheel and found that I can get a really nice wide range of mixing with just those 3 primaries, which is great. And in seeing how well they were with color mixing, I decided, okay, let's just do a nice quick little illustration of a tree or something. So just laid it out with both brushwork as well as with dip pen work, and honestly, they layered beautifully. I really enjoyed the entire experience of these. Again, these are just the pigment ones for this test, but really fell in love with them immediately, and just how well they laid out onto the page. I definitely will probably be picking these up more often than not when I'm doing something more illustrative. One thing I did notice about the colors, though, is especially when I was applying them versus having them dry on my page and with all my little tests off to the side, is while the colors were very bright and vibrant right when they were wet, as they dried, some of that color did dull out a little bit. Now that is to say that seems to only be the case with the pigmented inks. The dye-based Tesla coil ink did not have that problem. It was super bright and vibrant. I'm not sure how exactly those inks will perform in the long term, especially with exposure, but of course, because I painted a little bit of a little sample card there, those test swatches will be going over to my window, and in about 6 months I will revisit those, probably in a short video, where we can put that light fastness to a much better test. After I finished the illustration, I decided I wanted just a little bit more of traditional pen and ink sort of techniques. So I dragged out a piece of bristboard, which I really want to see how it performed on a slightly smoother surface. Beautifully, as it did with the cold pressed watercolor, definitely 100% there. Decided to try to draw a Deku Baba from Zelda Twilight Princess, which arguably I rushed through and it kind of looks like crap. But it did give me a much better understanding of how this ink would perform in a longer illustration process. And as a final sort of crazy thought idea, I was like, you know what I really want to do with the Tesla coil dye ink is I want to plug this into one of my Pentel pocket brush pens. I managed to happen to have one floating around that I could clean out in a relatively short amount of time. And honestly, I freaking love this. I definitely want to pick up more of these, of their other inks to try in different pens and stuff like that, specifically in more of the Pentel brush pens, because honestly, having that bright blue ink flow out of the pen for the first time just really got me excited. So with all of that testing, what do we come to as the conclusion here? What are the pros and cons of the ink from the Birmingham Pen Company? On the good side of things, as I found from my testing, is holy crap, do I love this ink in my dip pens. I have a lot of different inks. I've got traditional like Speedball and Higgins ink, everything from India ink to traditional Iron Gall ink, calligraphy ink, acrylic inks that I've been using for years. These are the single best inks that I have ever used in my dip pens, period. Despite having a smaller selection of the pigmented inks, they have an insane amount of dye-based inks. Like I said at the top of the video, it's over 100 colors, which is kind of nuts. Also, something I mentioned before, whether that be the jar themselves or just the packing material and everything like that, this is some world-class design right here. I'm thoroughly impressed. Honestly, actual art companies should probably take a lesson from these guys. Also, what I thought was a really expensive sort of specialty product at first, and well, it is definitely a specialty product, these inks range for anywhere from $15 to $35 a bottle for both the small and the large ones, which I thought was a lot of money at first, and then I was like, wait a minute, these are a lot bigger than a traditional bottle of ink. Most inks that you go out and buy, little bottles of ink, even something like acrylic, my Golden High Flows, those are 1 ounce or 30 ml bottles. These jars are 60 mils. They're twice the amount of ink that you would get for probably a similar price by volume, which is really awesome. And then the bigger ones, this is a full 100 mils. That is a lot of ink for that amount of money. Now, all products are going to have some downsides. It's just the nature of things, and if you're going to make a good review, you have to find something to nitpick on, right? My biggest gripe, I think, is just that the pigmented inks aren't super pigmented. I want a little bit more pigment concentration in the product, and it's just not there. I find that, again, as it dried, it pasteled out a little bit more. The colors are vibrant, but I definitely was expecting a little bit more punch to all of those colors. In addition to being pigmented inks, they're also missing a very important part of any pigmented product, and it's the pigment information. So it's blue, it's called Ice Age. It definitely looks like it's probably a phthalo or an ultramarine, but what pigments are on here? I don't know, they're not on the label. Once again, granted, these are designed for writing inks and fountain pens, so the company's probably not really thinking about putting that on their product because it's not every day that a visual artist is buying their stuff. Additionally, because I wasn't using a fountain pen, and if you know anything about fountain pens, you don't really do anything to a fountain pen to get the ink into them. Like, with the exception of some really old style fountain pens, they have sort of like cartridges and things, so either you just put the pen in and it absorbs the ink, or it has like a little bit of a plunger where you kind of pull the ink out. So there's no real need to have a vehicle to utilize the ink other than just your pen. For that reason, this is just an open jar of ink, and if you spill it, you're going to run into some problems. I do think that these jars could probably be retrofitted with a dropper top. So Birmingham, if you're listening, even if you sell it separately, and in fact, that'd probably be a great business decision for the sake of, you know, making an extra couple of bucks on the side, having an optional dropper top for these would go a very long way. And my final complaint is, I would say, a first world problem. The shipping time for these inks was way longer than I was expecting. Now, when I ordered, in the order email, it said, hey, if you ordered a specific fountain pen from us, do know that these are all made to order and they take like a month to make. And it's like, all right, cool. I didn't order any pens. So, okay. It took me a little longer also to browse the website to find that they don't get orders out right away. I think their turnaround time from order to shipment was 7 to 12 business days, which honestly I really think should be a lot more front and center in their website, especially when you go to order. Like, before you hit OK purchase, it should say, hey, it's going to take some time. Personally, again, it's not a huge deal, but I think in this day and age with fast and immediate overnight Amazon shipping and stuff like that, we're kind of spoiled in things getting out the door on time. Now, in Birmingham's defense, they have 2 full-time employees in this entire company. So obviously they are very busy in terms of producing the ink, taking care of all the advertising, as well as getting stuff out the door with 2 people. That's a lot of work, I get it. But for a company that can go out of their way to make custom box tape with more messages on them and postcards and special little custom paper clips and all this design stuff and do all the design stuff on the website, I think they could afford to get the orders out the door on a more timely fashion. But hey, that's just my opinion. Also, this isn't really a pro or a con, it's just a standard thing with dye-based inks. They're messy. My fingers are going to be blue for like 3 days.
Why am I blue? Does everyone glow blue?
So normally at this point in the video, I would say, have you tried these inks before and what did you think of them? But I can guarantee that there's probably not a lot of people out there that actually know these exist, especially as an option for artists. Honestly, I really love these. I definitely want to try more of their dye-based inks. Even though dye is known to fade and where pigment is known to last a lot longer, Birmingham actually specifically calls this line of their inks with the pigment an everlasting formula, where often it's their keystone or twinkle twinkle formula for their dye-based inks. They also have an interesting line of hybrid inks, which I assume are dye and pigment to get the best of both worlds, so to speak. But I am definitely interested in testing these out more going on down the road. And if you have never heard of these before, and this video has inspired you to check them out, tell them Cinder Studios sent you. But that's going to do it for my review of the inks from the Birmingham Pen Company, a fairly new local business here in Pittsburgh that I definitely wanted to shout out. And honestly, going forward, I'm hoping to support them going on down the road, because supporting local business is good, especially when it's a very small local business being run by 2 people. If you guys enjoyed this, or want to stick around for more of the journey as I take a look at new art products and old art products and things to keep you inspired and working in your studio, go ahead and hit the like button, get subscribed if you're not already. Check me out in socials in the description box below, including the community Discord. Sign up for my newsletter on my website, and this has been Cinder Studios reminding you to keep on creating, and I will see you guys next time.